Well, welcome back. It's great to have you back. Hope you enjoyed the refreshments and the networking, and we're delighted to resume our program. Our next distinguished speaker is Harry Coker, Jr. Mr. Coker is the Executive Director for the National Security Agency. He is currently serving on a joint duty assignment at the NSA. In this capacity, he works with NSA's Director and Deputy Director to provide leadership in all areas of the enterprise and to represent NSA's interests both internally and externally. Mr. Coker began his career in the civilian federal service in December of 2000 when he joined the CIA as a program manager systems engineer. Prior to joining the civilian ranks, he served 20 years in the United States Navy as a surface warfare officer and an engineering duty officer, retiring as a commander. He will discuss this morning cybersecurity partnerships with government, industry, and allies, and it is my great privilege to introduce to you Mr. Harry Coker. Mr. Coker.
Always a pleasure. Good morning, all. It really is a pleasure to be here, and I'm just delighted that so many of us brave the weather. That's just an indication of how important this is. And on that import side, many thanks to Tom and his team for the invitation and for standing tall through the elements, maintaining the agility. We appreciate that. Because it really is events like this which bring together leaders in the cybersecurity community from across the world and from all sectors, private and public, and academia, that help us all become better partners and better cyber defenders. So Tom, it's a credit to you that you have brought this organization so far in such a short amount of time. Thanks. And the fact that you routinely get the best and the brightest technical minds from across industry and academia in the same room with heads of state, agency leaders, and other high-ranking officials is testimony to your reputation in the community. Well done. Keep up the great work, because to get where we all need to be from a cybersecurity perspective, it will take a group of experts with diverse points of view coming together and deliberately planning and sharing information. I'm proud to represent one important piece of that puzzle. At the National Security Agency, we have two primary missions: intelligence and cybersecurity. But those lines of business have changed significantly over the last couple of decades. The core of what we do remains steadfast. Our mission remains focused in foreign signals intelligence and cybersecurity, what we used to call information assurance. But I've heard people incorrectly characterize cyber as a new mission for the National Security Agency. Certainly, it is true that more and more our intelligence work takes place in cyberspace, but cyberspace is simply another realm where we execute our missions, just like we execute them on land, in the air, on the sea, or in space. There is no arguing, however, that we are rightly focused more and more on executing our missions in this fifth and only virtual domain called cyberspace. When the internet came into being, it started as a simple communications medium, but has it ever evolved? We soon began leveraging the internet for more communications, for more storage of knowledge, and soon it morphed into a medium where we conducted personal business and finances like home banking and e-commerce. Before long, nations began using it as a repository for information, oftentimes sensitive information. Public service systems were honed and operated in cyberspace, and worldwide financial tractions occurred there. You know the rest. The internet, cyberspace, is ubiquitous now, no longer simply a convenience, but ingrained as a way of life. Everyone and everything seemingly is connected and has an IP address. But along with that convenience and connections comes heightened vulnerability. And as a repository for the world's wealth, intellect, and treasure, it is the most target-rich environment in history. Today we have an exponentially bigger attack surface, providing bad actors ample prospects for access and obfuscation of their cyberspace operations, regardless of their motivation or capability. The stark reality is that it is imperative for us as a worldwide cybersecurity community to master the cyber domain to ensure our security. NSA's mission includes protecting and defending a specific piece of that, the national security systems piece. This includes all classified networks and a few unclassified networks that involve intelligence activities or equipment that is critical to military or intelligence missions. Unfortunately, my colleague, Mary Ann Bailey, who is the Deputy National Manager for National Security Systems, is not likely to make it today, but she was going to provide a deeper dive on that critical topic. So perhaps in the near future we can reconnect with Mary Ann. Nevertheless, with its vast responsibility to protect our national security systems, that is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to what our adversaries target. Sophisticated adversaries, as well as simplistic troublemakers, realize there are countless softer targets than those categorized as national security systems. And disrupting some of those softer targets can potentially be even more impactful than compromising a national security system. Think about the computer systems that compromise the backbone of the financial sector, handling millions of transactions per day, or systems that command and control public transportation and public utility. They don't all fall into the national security system realm, but clearly they are national treasures which must be protected to ensure the safety and well-being of the general public. Of course, election meddling has been front and center in the public discourse recently, and hopefully you'll hear more about that from Rick Ledgett later this afternoon. But our democratic institutions must be kept safe and worthy of the public trust, and that public trust encompasses both the U.S. public and the populace of democracy-valuing countries around the globe. That is why groups like this, of smart, diversified, caring professionals, are an absolutely essential part of the cybersecurity collective. We are in a never-ending innovation race, a race that cannot be won by ideas alone. This race will be won by noble values and by outcomes that result from collaboration and integration across the public, private sectors, and international boundaries as well. And it is incumbent upon all of us in this room to meet that challenge, to learn, to grow, and better equip ourselves to defend against those who wish to do us harm. In some ways, the deck is stacked against us in cyberspace. Our national values and laws hold us to the proper set of high standards that our adversaries will never choose to respect. Hence, they treat cyberspace much like the wild, wild west, with no boundaries or standards of decency. I would argue that the internet and the presumed anonymity provided in cyberspace represents the biggest force multiplier in history. Malicious cyber tools are inexpensive and easy to come by, such a low barrier to entry. And with an internet connection, some savvy, even a little resourced, unsophisticated actor can strike a blow against much more powerful opponents. It's no exaggeration to say that cyber vulnerability is one of the biggest strategic threats that we face today. And it's not just a government problem. It requires more than the clichéist whole-of-government response. It's not just a whole-of-nation response. It's a whole-of-nations, plural. Every nation, every sector, every company is impacted by cyber threats. Cyber is a one-of-a-kind domain that has evolved so quickly that the development of norms, policies, and lanes in the roads has lagged behind. We're still working hard to understand and define roles and responsibilities in cyberspace. But one thing is not in doubt. We all have a role, whether we hang our hat in government, industry, or academia. Individual network operators have a responsibility to defend their organizations and their information, to include their respective connections to other networks that can expose additional vulnerabilities. At the same time, government has a responsibility to protect the nation from threats at home and abroad. And how these two responsibilities mesh is the subject of a continuing conversation. And groups like this, again, need to help us come up with the right answers. The conversation will continue, and all the while, we must listen to one another and work together to up our game to meet the cyber threat heads on. There are a myriad of challenges when it comes to making that happen, however. Oftentimes, the government can be its own worst enemy, and our policies and regulations don't always make it easy for us to team with industry and academia effectively. Likewise, some corporate cultures, being bottom-line driven, changes the risk calculus, and too often security can take a back seat to rush to the market. But it is incumbent on all of us to figure it out, because the alternative is failure. We have to understand the impact and repercussions of our decisions. Convenience and security rarely go hand in hand, and it is our job to make the work of our adversaries harder, not easier. The incessant and rapid pace of technological development in the cyber arena continues to outstrip our ability to organize ourselves to address cyber threats before they become major cyber incidents. We have to up our game, and we have to do it together. A lot of good things are happening in this space, led by many of you. At NSA, we're working very hard with our partners at DHS and in law enforcement and the private sector and our allies to more broadly share information in near real time. Our colleagues at DHS are working very proactively with industry partners, and Jeanette Manfer and her team at DHS recently piloted a program with the financial sector that is improving how we keep our systems and transactions safeguarded from our adversaries. Other elements of critical infrastructure like electrical power and communications also have efforts underway to improve information sharing and to address systematic vulnerabilities. All in all, I am encouraged by the progress that they are making, because we're also leveraging strategic international partnerships more than ever to master the cyber domain. We have a lot of capabilities across the U.S. cybersecurity community, but our international partners, many of whom are here today, also bring unique perspective to the table, both technically and due to their target knowledge of our common adversaries. As I look around this room and see those friends from across the oceans, it's good. And of course, amongst those are our Five Eye partners. Those relationships really are key to much of what we do. That will remain so, and those relationships will grow, rooted in our long-standing trust of one another. But more and more, we are finding mutual value in our cyber relationships with other partner nations across the globe. As cyber threats evolved, unbounded by geography, it is vital that our cyber defense partnerships grow in kind. And as we grow existing partnerships, and as we begin new ones, we must always remember that in any international relationship, whether bilateral or multinational, that cooperation and respect for all parties is essential. We must also respect national norms and laws. And we have to always be mindful that the moment we enter into a sharing relationship with a partner, we are now responsible for safeguarding not only our information, but theirs as well. Risk accepted by one is accepted by all when we are sharing information and space on the net. That is something that none of us can afford to take lightly. There are a lot of good folks doing everything they can to detect, deter, and mitigate cyber threats. NSA is but one, but we are just one piece of a puzzle that's huge. And given the vastness of the threat, combating it will take this entire community of willing partners, each bringing our own unique capabilities, insights, and authorities to the table. And as I look around the room, I know we have a group that is up to the challenge. We must all partner to the extent possible to ensure a decisive strategic advantage in cyberspace. You have our full commitment to be an able, willing partner in this endeavor, and I'm also counting on the same from each of you. Thank you. Sure thing. Thanks, Al. You got it.
Mr. Coker, thank you very much for your remarks. I know you're under a tight schedule. We appreciate very much your speaking with us this morning, and I'm deeply grateful for the National Security Agency's work on behalf of securing our country. The talented and dedicated large team at National Security Agency are truly some of the unsung heroes of our country. that and truly deserve to be recognized, and supported, and appreciated. So thank you very much, sir, for your kind remarks.